Are you a little square on your screen?
Uh, can you hear that?
Yes, I heard that.
Recording in progress.
So say hello.
Hello,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Hello and welcome to Queer Eye Straight Talk with me, Reiko, and my lovely co-host, G.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So today we're talking about the curse of Christianity, right?
Yeah,
Particularly, why are you laughing? That's what you called it. That's why
I do call it that. I just think it's funny. I'm pretty sure people are like,
like how it might look from the outside. It's like, what?
yeah.
But yeah, that's what we're going to dissect a little bit here today. So particularly with how it's affected our community, the Black community, and I don't know, it just has this chokehold on our people that is just inexcusable now in 2025. Like I just feel like there's no reason for a Black person to be a Christian in 2025. And
I
I don't care who that offends. That's just my feeling.
no, I agree with you. I think that what it shows, I mean, globally, the fact that we're still like a society who depends so much on religion,
Mm,
it's a lack of evolution.
mm,
Know?
that,
I mean, it's just like we may as well still like be running in the streets like the sky is falling, the sky is falling. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So it feels like that, especially now where we're going through like this resurgence of like political and biblical intermingling, and
mm,
people don't know the history of like how these religions like got the chokehold on us that they did as a society, not just as Black people. But I feel like because Black people are always like, we're more evolved, we learn quicker,
yeah.
but we still haven't got past like the colonizers like religion, and it's crazy.
I mean, how do you think that, like, what do you think the reason is? Because I'm trying to imagine if I was a Christian, like, because I grew up in a Christian home, if I was still believing in that and I had TikTok, right, and I had social media, at this point, there would be enough things in there to make me think, to look deeper and question things. So I feel like I would have eventually come to this point anyway. But for someone who's a Christian, the argument I get a lot is that, well, I still have a personal relationship with God, right? It doesn't matter about the chaos and the scandals in the church and like all the theft and the pedophilia.
Yeah, they'll
I
say
have,
that's not my God.
yeah, well, yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, it
like
seems to
that's
be the
the
same
one.
God. I mean, he's pretty consistent. You say
I
he's a
mean, he
consistent God,
is.
right?
He is.
That's
And
what they
like
say.
but that's what they'll say, right? They'll be like, my God is different than that. My God is different than the one who lets all of these, or who who is the God of someone who's like a racist. Like they'll be like, oh, that's not my God. It's the same
Or
God.
they'll blame the devil. They'll say that that's not God, that's actually the devil. And that's actually
Right.
humanity because humanity has free will. So God is not to blame here.
But when you read the Bible,
Yeah.
is God. You know what I mean?
Mm.
He was the creator of genocides, I mean the Old Testament and biblical times is basically them telling the story of their supremacy, like how they were able to force this religion on peaceful people
Yeah.
across the Middle and Near East, so when you start reading that story, and then a lot of times like Black people like we're the Hebrews or we're the Israelites, we're like black people are not in the Bible, you know what I mean? We're just not, it's not our story, and they don't even understand that it's not about our suffrage. They use that to placate our suffrage, and get people to agree somehow. They brainwashed us for centuries at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Black Israelite thing is another thing. It runs very deep in Ghana because the names of places and people in Ghana are, a lot of them are rooted in the Hebrew. So it's like, how did that happen? That's interesting to me. And I do have family members who believe that we are like I can't even say it, the original Jews. um, and that the Bible is actually about us, and that it's been whitewashed.
Well, you know what? It's hilarious because what's the difference of those people and the Black Americans who think they're the Native Americans? You
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what I mean?
They're in the
Like,
same camp. They would
it,
be best friends.
exactly. I think that when these stories, because they were beaten into us so long ago, right? They were beaten into us so long ago, and you become what you believe. You know what I mean? Like you become these people who have to suffer to get to the golden pyramids in the sky. You know what I mean?
But with the names, how do you explain the names? Place names and people names. They've been around for centuries, right?
I
In
mean,
Ghana. So
so has so has like I mean, it was centuries ago when the colonizers came, right? They named Nigeria Nigeria. They gave everything its name.
yeah, but I don't know. I don't believe the Black Jew thing, but I do find like when you actually look into the names, like Ghanaian names, I don't know. It seems like that history is long. It's longer. I don't know if it's. I don't know the timelines. That's the thing. Like it could be what you're saying, but I feel like it goes further back than that because we have really traditional names, and a lot of them have intermingled with the Hebrew somehow.
But we don't know how language was really developed, right? So we call something Hebrew, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was from what we now know as Hebrew. You know
Interesting.
what I mean? So like that part could be whitewashed. Like what we call something now,
Mm,
when you look at even like during biblical times when they were like causing havoc through like what became like the Holy Land, like in the Middle East, right? They they stole things and reordered languages that already existed. And so now that you might call something Hebrew, but it doesn't mean it was actually Hebrew. It could have always been African. And,
mm,
Hebrew could derive from the other
interesting.
way.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlaps like that. Like Ugandan, like there's a Ugandan language that's very similar to Japanese, even the names. And I've seen like creators from both sides saying how similar some of the names
I
are.
mean, Africans were the first people and
Yeah.
like they spread out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess it's just like starts to be like, what did you call African? There were dark skinned people across the world, right? Like in Asia and all of these places, there were dark skinned people, and we can't say that okay, just because they left Africa, what became Africa, that they weren't at some point from the continent. But as time goes by, they're from someplace else. You know what I mean? Like their history becomes and their culture becomes the things that they created in those other places after centuries and meeting, other groups of people and intermingling. So, that's why I think like people get confused because when you talk about Jesus in the Bible having like dark skin and hair of wool,
Mm,
that is not necessarily an exclusive trait just to African people.
interesting.
We can see dark skinned people in Asia and other places that
Yeah, but who has woolly hair?
lots of people have woolly hair, especially if white people writing it's woolly. Like, what does a white person with stick straight hair think is woolly?
Yeah, well,
I mean, Puerto Rican hair can be woolly. You know what I mean? I'm not like you can still have like be from African descent but you've mixed with other people. Like
so
there are white people with
you
like
think Jesus
woolly
was
hair.
mixed? You
Hmm?
think Jesus was mixed then? He could have been mixed. Because what I'm saying is you're saying that the woolly hair thing doesn't necessarily mean he's black, right?
It
And
doesn't mean
you're
that
not
he's
playing devil's advocate.
African. You know
Okay.
what I mean? And the descriptions that we have right now to apply to something like 10,000 years ago is not the same.
I don't know. I mean, woolly hair is pretty consistent for
Woolly hair, but white people wrote this.
I know, but
Mateo has woolly hair.
they were accurate in their descriptions of black people having woolly hair, particularly from Ethiopia
Yeah, but
and those
Ethiopia
sides.
is still was like more by Egypt and like that area. Like,
Yeah, but it was still part of where it's still where it is today, but also
yeah.
more. Like so it wasn't like not there.
No, I'm not saying it wasn't there because they wrote about Egypt and all of these places like back then. I mean, the first people who brought Christianity to Ethiopia were the Greeks during the time of like the Egyptian like things. So that's why they feel like they have the most original Christianity, because it wasn't a part of like the colonizers that hit West Africa.
Very interesting. Interesting. I'd like to look into that Ethiopian Christianity, see what they think and how it's different, you know?
Well, they have more books in their Bible, and they consider it more orthodox. They have a different
Yeah, they're
shape
very
of cross that they use.
right.
Um, but I would like to see what the books are different
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the Ethiopian Bible. It would be interesting to read.
definitely. I think for our next podcast, if you want, we can try and get some excerpts and things.
Yeah, we could look into it a little deeper.
I'm
Like
sure
see
people
what's
would like to
different
know.
between the Ethiopian Bible and the most popular King James version.
Yeah, classic. Yeah, he murdered his mum, you know.
He was also queer.
I didn't know that. Well,
Yeah.
many kings. I don't know which king it was. There's been a few English kings that were queer, to be honest.
Well, yeah, there are probably a lot, but considering how like how the King James version of the Bible has shaped people's like ideas about queerness, and him being a queer person was, it's just ironic.
So yeah, let's talk about that. What the hell's that about? I mean, why would he, you know, put things in there that would condemn himself?
I mean, the thing is, I don't really see where it's like condemning. There's all kinds of like interpretations that you shouldn't lie with, men and all of this, but there's other people who interpret that during the time as something different than, you know what I mean, what we're interpreting it as now. Um, but they don't even talk that much about queerness in the Bible. There's
Mm.
like maybe just one or two like excerpts that people like try to use, but it's not really an anti-queer book. It's more of how people have decided to interpret marriage between a man and woman, and since the Bible exploits women like regularly, they want to keep that trend.
Or, you know, the Apostle Paul said that marriage should be between a man and a woman. And then Jesus, I always admired the character of Jesus because he never condemned homosexuality. But then I heard recently someone use this, right? Jesus said, a man will leave his wife. He was quoting the Old Testament. He's saying that a man, no, will leave his family and become one with his wife. I think that was in Genesis. And there was some point when Jesus said that in the New Testament. But how do you feel about the fact that Paul, because you said the book is not anti-gay, but I feel like Paul was very anti-gay.
I
Because
think that this book was meant to create a patriarchal supremacy, right? And ultimately, how they acquired land a lot of times, because when you like talk about the Old Testament, um, when they talk about pagans, they're talking about women, right? They're talking about women-led like societies,
what makes you think that?
because that's what the pagans were. They like that's what they were killing off in the Old Testament was goddess led religions. Those were the first religions. And so pagan, if you like read the Bible, where basically almost every woman is a prostitute, right? Like Jezebel was actually a priestess that they labeled a prostitute in the Bible. Okay, the reason that these men needed to marry these women was to take their land. This is how men acquired began the patriarchy, is like by forcing these women into marriage and getting them to turn on their original religions. And
Where are you getting this from?
from like the biblical, like you can read, I started reading that book When God Was a Woman,
Right.
and then I've done deep dives into like the goddess era and who the pagans were, and um, why and how did patriarchy start. Because like white people started what was became Judaism, and Judaism is what Christianity and Islam split off of, right? So it's all basically the
Did you
same.
say did you say white people created Judaism?
Yeah, the Indo-Europeans
Okay. Okay.
that invaded the Middle East and started their,
The Ashkenazi Jews, those are the ones who
I'm
spread
talking about like
Zionism.
Indo-Europeans. So like before you even gave it a name, right? Before it has a name, like before like when they were before Christ. So before like there was this idea of what religion was, you know what I mean? They brought down this idea of like hellstone and fire because they like confused volcanoes for gods, basically. So they come down with their ignorant like ideas that have it was like the first incels took over the world. That's basically what it was. And what they found was like these women-led societies like in Greece there is like I'm sorry, not in Greece, in Italy the Pantheon was actually built by women during the goddess era, and all of this history is lost. A lot of the Greek um like in Athens, a lot of the Greek structures there were actually women. This is turning into a whole different conversation. like, like they were like built by women, and these Indo-Europeans from like Russia and I think like Denmark, like early Europeans came down, never seen color before, been up in snow, which is why they're obsessed with whiteness, and they were
Mm,
pale. So
mm,
they come down and see all these brown people and who are basically living their best lives, like fucking and having fun, and they got mad and
mm.
was like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be, and they started killing people. These like were peaceful societies, and this is the beginning of the religion that everybody thinks is the religion of peace.
Mm.
But nowhere in like the Old Testament does their God say anything but like burn all the people, over and over again. So well, while I don't think it was written in a way to say, oh, it hates they hate queer people, male dominance just doesn't leave a room for that. It doesn't leave room for that discussion, you know. And when you think about Christianity coming from the Roman Empire, and like the Romans, they were huge on homosexuality and
Mhm.
having sex with younger boys, and there was a dominance of like what that was for them. So to say that the as Christianity was like developing, that's when they got this idea of being very strongly against these dominant sexual things between men. So I don't know, it just became a cultural fight more than anything else because the church wanted to rule.
So all the homos in in ancient Rome thought, okay, let's suppress our homosexuality. We'll do it behind the curtains. We'll all go into the church and we'll become popes and stuff, and that's where we'll diddle little boys.
That's what I think.
I
I
mean, yeah,
actually
for the
think
sake
I
of presenting as this anti-gay, strong church presence, they would sacrifice themselves in that way and being publicly gay for the sake of, like you're saying, cultural dominance of religion.
yeah.
Is that what you think?
I think that that was how they started. When you look at how they started to acquire land and started to actually do a lot of get a lot of money and income, right? The sexual dominance, right? And how like they started to associate like sex and as weaknesses, they were taking advantage of the weak. Like even now when we talk about like the Catholic Church and often, molesting children, they're taking advantage of the weaker people around them. And
Mm-hmm.
so this whole thing where men have this control over other men had to be like limited in some sort of way. Um, because most of the people who like became church leaders were relatively weak type of people. So they had to create a dominance and create a narrative around sex just being nasty in general.
Interesting. Interesting take.
Hold on, I'm gonna open the window. Hate summer.
And yet you're going to Thailand.
I know because I love travel. Um, what do you think
About this, or about like going back to like the Bible stuff?
about how like the hatefulness around queerness and homosexuality
Hmm.
in the Bible is presented?
I couldn't find. I remember looking for a scripture that said like being with a woman is wrong, and I think there was one like sentence in the New Testament that was similar to the Old Testament one, saying you shouldn't lie with a man. So, but those were the only things I could ever find.
There's
But
not anything about women and women like in the Bible because
it wasn't even a factor of like the.
no,
Not
it
not.
wasn't a fact. And not to say that it didn't exist,
Yeah.
but again, it doesn't have like men were meant to control, and then men were also meant to control like the women around them. So like this idea doesn't even show up, I think, because men are going to be in control. Period.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole premise of the Bible. Like that's why they forced women into relationships and marriages for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this obsession with homosexuality from religion, um, I've always found it a bit odd because, as I say, like there's very scanty evidence in the Bible that says very clearly, apart from those sentences that allude to it. And even then, I was told that the "thou should not lie with a man" thing was actually talking about prostitution. But I don't know how true that is, but that's what I heard it was about, and that it's not actually about being with a man
Yeah,
in
I heard
general.
it. I heard it was, I don't know if it was, I want to look now because, um, hold on. See, you know what? It's so funny because, when I just Googled to see if I could find the actual like meaning of or the actual scripture, it's changed, right? So I remember learning, like reading, like hearing in the Bible, you don't lie with another man. And then this new this new Bible translation writes, do not lie with a person of the same sex in the same way you lie with a person of the opposite sex. It is detestable.
It is what?
Detestable.
Yeah.
That's like who's editing it? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
That's crazy. That's crazy. Because see, yeah, that's crazy. Erasure in real time.
no, it's so crazy because you have to try and rely on what you remember
Mhm.
before you started deconstructing some of these ideas. I guess like what led you on your journey of deconstructing Christianity?
Honestly, it was the inconsistencies in the Bible. I can't think of actual examples, but I remember, as a kid, I was really all for it because I didn't know any different, and I was raised to like, yeah, love Jesus and all that. So, but as I was going through the Bible and getting older and getting more understanding about things, I was like, huh, but in the Old Testament, God said this, or even sometimes in the same Testament, God said this, but now He's doing that. But doesn't that contradict? And one of the things was like, I asked my mom like, God is a jealous God, right? Like that's not a good thing. And she was like, no, but it means like he's jealous as in he only wants to be the only one. Like he's passionate. It's not jealous like bad. It's like jealous like he wants to be the only one. I don't know. Certain things just didn't sound like he didn't sound like a good guy, to be honest. Um, he allowed incest. He allowed, massacres. He spoke to people and told them to go kill a bunch of people, and then he was saying he's the God of peace. He didn't like his first rendition of humanity, so he wiped them out with a flood, um, and just thought, start again. But then why hasn't he done anything about the destruction we live in now? That's what I was thinking at the time. Like,
Yeah.
if he could just wipe all the evil out and start again, why didn't he do that then? Why is he not
Why
doing
did
it?
he even create the evil to begin with?
Yeah, I know.
I
Well,
think
Christians
it's
always say it's to make life more challenging. It's the free will. Otherwise, you'd be boring. But then when you think about,
otherwise it would be boring. And what's hilarious though, like they want to be bored, right? So you want to go to heaven and be bored for the rest of your life.
well, exactly. Let's talk about that because like when you actually deep it and look at the conditions of heaven, my God, what a drag! Like first of all, you've got to wake up every day. You don't even sleep. You're just worshiping God all the time with all the other angels. He's got legions of angels. Why does he need us to do it as well? You know?
He's like the most narcissistic,
Right.
like awful. I mean, it's just a man. What the
Yeah.
only thing that they describe in the Bible is a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's it. And it's like a man wrote a story about how he's so great and how everybody needs to love him. It's just that. I mean, the whole Bible, the whole Bible is about trying to control
Yeah.
women and how that controls society.
Yeah.
Because without our control and our subjugation,
Mm,
you know what I mean? They don't have anything.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they really don't. It's like, and it's why nothing else will fulfill their need to like dominate. They want to dominate over women.
Someone said man created God because he was jealous of the fact that women could create life or something like that. Created religion so that because to compete with the fact that women can create literally create life.
And that's why there was God, like that's why there was goddess led, women led religions before Christianity. Because why wouldn't you worship the thing that creates life? You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like you understand all life comes from this woman. And there's lots of in the Old Testament, there's lots of scriptures that refer to the names of goddesses and names of like things that are related to the goddesses and their religions, but people don't know that. So
I didn't know that.
when they're talking about like the ashra, that was one of the goddess led, like that was their part of their a goddess, like
Oh,
part of the goddess religion. And when they talk about like burning down like all of their idols from the like trees and blah blah blah, like all of those things are
yeah,
related to the goddess led religions. And
interesting.
so people don't actually know that. So the whole Old Testament is basically them talking about them killing women
Mm.
and subjugating women and stealing from women because they didn't want any memory of that to ever exist. So Jezebel, for example, she was still practicing goddess religions, and that's how they made her decided to turn her into a whore. You know what I mean? And
Air
like
campaign.
yeah, like seriously, it's smear campaigns to no other. I mean, but she had a daughter who was a princess, right?
Oh,
But
I didn't
they
know that.
yeah, so it's the whole Bible like twist like how you see women for a reason. And it led into the witch hunts and all of those things, like burning women.
You
That
said witch hunts, right?
hmm?
Because it sounded like you said witch cunts. Carry
No,
on.
witch hunts.
Okay. We don't hate women over here.
But yeah, I know, like, I mean, no, if I didn't say that, but I said witch hunts. Like, that was them stealing land from women. Those were single
That
women.
makes
Like,
sense.
anybody could be a witch. And
Yeah.
then who got that land? Sometimes the accusing family got it. A
Mm.
lot of times the church got it.
Mm.
So that's how they were to acquire so much thing and
Makes so
then
much sense. Yeah.
keep women in fear. When we start talking about how that's now translated into like us, you know what I mean? Being like subjugated. And there was a special Bible, in America for slaves. They had a slave Bible that basically took out any like uprisings and things like that and only talked about, being
Submitting to your
good to your
master. And
masters
yeah,
and blah blah blah. And when King Leopold went into the Congo
yeah. Hmm.
with their missionaries, he wrote them very specific instructions
Right.
on what to do to Black people to try and subjugate them through religion. So we've been mentally abused with Christianity for
Yeah.
generations.
That's the words. Yeah. And then another thing that never made sense to me, because I would read these Bible stories in the quiet of night, and I would just, reflect on it. And a lot of them didn't sit right with me. For example, the one where I think was it Abraham? God told Abraham to take his son up a mountain and kill him for him.
Hmm.
And so he goes up this mountain and he's about to do it. And God says, actually, no, mate, I was only pulling your leg. Don't worry about it. It was a joke. I
Just
just
wanted
wanted
to
to see
see
if
if
you
you'd
would.
do it.
I just
Just
wanted
want
to
to
see
see
if
how
you would do it.
loyal.
And I thought, what kind of sadistic fucking God is this? Who derives pleasure from toying with a man, a parent? Like,
Men,
like, I thought God is sadistic. I thought, either, that's when I started to think, no, someone's written this. Either God can't really be like this because there's no way, right? And if he is like this, then I'm done. I don't want to know someone like that
yeah.
who can allow things to happen. So either way, it didn't sit with me very well. And I
Was
took a
your
step back.
was your mom with your dad while you were growing up?
No.
I think that helps because like when you have men in the house who are dominating and domineering and
Mm,
then they use like the Bible
mm,
as a justification, um it's part of like it becomes like this acceptable family dynamic,
mm,
because there's always an excuse
mm.
and it's always someone else's fault. Even God in the Bible, you made me jealous, you made me mad, you didn't worship me right, you didn't bring me my sacrifices, like he was, I mean, he's like a cunty cunt, you know what
Mm.
I mean, like so I
Yeah.
feel like he's mad all the time, right? And then everything is somebody else's fault. Like,
That's true.
it's just
That's
men,
true.
like, it's just men. It's just like dealing with like the average dude. Like no accountability. Like, and then when you think about God, Jesus Christ, like the Holy Spirit,
Mm.
um, you're worshiping three different deities.
Right. Let's talk about this because this is a real head fuck for anyone trying to get their head around, either for a child or someone new to the concept of Christianity. That I remember struggling with this for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that God is everything, right? But he has this spirit mate, which is also from him, that just kind of hangs around. And then he morphed into physical flesh to take our sins away when he didn't have to do that. He could have just taken our sins away.
I know, like,
Or like, how is it that Jesus died thousands of years ago for all of our sins? So he died, he killed him, he died, right? He was killed for all of our sins forever in perpetuity. So if I sin today, why do I need to repent? If I've already been forgiven, right?
because of yeah, like original sin still somehow lingers on
Yeah,
everybody.
there's a lot of
Like it,
inconsistencies.
it, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
And I think it's because they stole so many things from pagans,
yeah, yeah,
tried to
yeah,
like
yeah.
incorporate,
Mm-hmm.
even the Jesus myth is pagan.
Yeah.
So it's just like everything that they stole and put together to create this story. Again, incels who lived up in Russia, who saw volcanoes spout fire and brimstone and rain down. Like when you start listening to like the scripture, like fire and brimstone, he rained down the great white light. You hear, you know what I mean? Like they were like on shrooms listening to like talking volcanoes and like coming up with an idea that that's their phallic symbol. So it must like that's the power of the penis, right? Like or something. And decided to like go and spread their crazy to the rest of like civilization.
What's interesting about the ancient Roman period around Christianity, like around the time Christ died, there was a lot of like other sects that came out of that. Christianity was just one of them, right? There was
Hmm.
lots of other like offshoots, and I always wondered like why did those other ones not survive? Why was it Christianity that was the one? Because they all
Because
believed in
Christians killed the heretics. Like anything that was,
that was different. So
yeah, different,
you're
they
saying the
killed it.
Christians killed the other sects off,
They
basically.
did. When you go to Rome, a lot of the huge piazzas, like where they have like this fountain, I can't remember the name of it right now, but I can't remember the name of the piazza, but there's a fountain that has like the four rivers, right? And it's the reaches of Christianity, this like Asia, um, Africa, the Americas, and Europe, right? So it's like talking about like the reach across the world of Christianity. This same plaza is where they would bring people and mass murder them for
Mhm.
not being Christians. Even like in early times, there's a the bridge of saints, Ponte Sant'Angelo, is where they used to march the Jews to try and force convert them into Christianity. So they killed everybody. And so that was also a place of like massacres, right? So they just killed all the heretics. That's who were people who were against,
Okay,
the
but people
Christ.
also killed them, right? There was a lot of Christian martyrs going around at that time. A lot of people getting killed for being a Christian as well by the Roman Empire.
I mean, yeah, but it didn't matter when the Crusades started. You know what I mean? Like, so that was them trying to kill off the Muslims, right? So
But
that
what I'm saying is like,
Muslims came out of Christianity.
but what I'm saying is like, in the Roman Empire,
Hmm.
because even in the Bible, Jesus like had haters, like he had like a lot of emperors out to get him and stuff.
Hmm.
So, and then as soon as he dies, then the emperor starts killing off his followers, right?
Hmm.
So I'm guessing there was bloodshed both ways.
Yeah, but Christianity wasn't even something yet, right? Christianity, when they killed Jesus, he was preaching about, a different way. He was a Jew, right?
Yeah.
He was preaching about a different way. So once they martyred him, this is what sparked Christianity. So yeah, they started trying to kill early Christians,
Mhm.
but yeah, they kept growing and, let my people free. They became the force and started fighting other sects. So like they already learned the lesson plan from Judaism of trying to kill off anybody who's like a heretic or don't, believe the way they wanted to believe. And I mean, it kept splitting. Eventually, it got less bloody, right? That's how you got Protestants and Baptists and blah blah blah. They were able to split off in different sects as
Such a
well.
violent religion, man.
It
Even,
is very violent religion.
even when you think about Northern Ireland and the whole thing between the Protestants and Catholics, you know about that?
No.
Still going on to this day. There's this contention between like Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland. One of them is Protestant, one of them is Catholic. And
Wait, that's why. I mean, I know that, but I didn't know religion was the
yeah,
reason.
yeah. They've had bloodshed over that for years, but it was the Protestant Catholic thing that caused a lot of death in Ireland. It's crazy, crazy lunacy. It's like I don't know. It's just it's just insanity to me. It's like
It
a
is.
bug that gets into the brain and it just you become obsessed with that thing. It's fanaticism. That's what I see.
No, it's actually, yeah, no, it's it's I don't it's seems like a mental illness at this point
Yeah,
because again, we have not evolved for
yeah.
tens of thousands of years that it,
We still believe this.
it
Yeah,
still believe the same thing and it's still affecting us the same way. We're still fighting religious
yeah.
wars and ideologies that don't make sense and have not mattered for anybody. You know what I mean? Like it literally has not mattered. So but you're still it's like I have the light on and the window open. It's still like something that people think they're justified in doing, like
Mm,
having these fights and arguments over something that just literally has not mattered in global mass at all for any of us, especially Black people.
yeah.
Like uh, taking your colonizer's religion and demonizing, spirituality that your ancestors like tried to carry over for us
Mm.
is crazy work for
It's
me.
the
Like it's
biggest. It's the
crazy work.
biggest slap in the face I can think of for the ancestors. Like,
No, it is. It's crazy work. And I think, my opinion is like because we talked about this before about like how Earth is low vibrational,
mm,
right? But that's because we are. I don't care like people like want to vibrate higher. The few people who are trying to actually vibrate higher cannot lift the entire world, right? We are the low vibration. And I think Christianity for Black people keeps us at that lower vibration because how can you worship a religion that was beat into you, that was literally you know, you were made to worship an idea that is so far from you, that hates you. You know what I mean? That it's just crazy. It's crazy to me.
If any Christian is watching this, or any Black Muslim as well, I'd like to know. I think we both like to know why you believe in it. No disrespect to you, like not trying to be offensive, but these are the discussions we need to have. And you can't just run away from it. You can't just be like, well, I'm gonna just believe blindly. You have to have critical thinking skills because guess what? Your God put them in your head. Your God created your brain, no? So you have critical thinking skills. I think the idea was to use them. So I just want to have that discussion about why you still believe this blindly, even though it was so violently imposed upon you. I really want to know the answer to that question.
I mean, I think partially it's like they don't know anything else. And so then you try to find the good in it, right? Like you try to find like that, well, my God, you know what I mean? Like you I think that the fact that it has taken our own power away and we don't know that it's taken our power away, that we give the name power, we give the name and all of this energy, that's what prayer and all of that, we're giving our energy away. What if we put that energy into ourselves, or each other,
Mhm.
into growing us? Like, what would that energy change us into? But instead we're giving it away.
Yeah.
We are giving gratitude and credit away.
Oh, man.
When we work so hard,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
are the ones who bled. We are like, our ancestors are the ones who bled.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like, how do we not give them the credit that
Mm,
they're
mm,
owed? But
mm.
we like give it away to like our energy away to some sky demon. It's just
Right.
insane.
Like when I think about Negro spirituals, which I really love, I can sit and listen to Negro spirituals from like the early 1900s,
Mhm,
1800s. I love it, all that shit. I feel like a lot of the talented musicians we have today are descendants of those people because
definitely.
the harmony and even like I appreciate gospel music for the musicality, right? I think a choir of Black women singing is one of the most beautiful sounds ever, right? So I
It
can
is.
and the way they like the way they sing, and I always think it's such a shame that like what you're saying, it's like you're giving all this talent and energy, and you're just like, you know, it's a kind of it's a shame. It's a shame to me because that could be used for other things, you know.
Yeah. We haven't been socialized to realize that we have that power inside of us. You know what I mean? And we could harness that power in
Yeah, like
a way.
yeah, like what I'm saying, like back then they were singing those songs to get through the day, right?
Yeah.
To get through the day, and 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 it was upliftment for them all.
Mhm.
It formed a kind of community thing, right? So, and it does in the church as well. That's why it's a shame because if that was out of the church and if it was in just in the Black community, we would have the same effect. We would have.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, when I used to go to church, I think the music was definitely the intoxicating thing about being there. You know what I mean? And um you feel that energy amongst each other, and in there it's just not harnessed for us. It's
Yeah,
just like that's the problem. It's not harnessed for us. And because it's not harnessed for us, that's why we still get in the church, and it's one of the worst, most toxic places you can be. Like the preacher sleeping with like half the congregation, and three of the like questioning whether like that's his baby. You know what I mean? Like all kinds of like stuff that is justified in certain ways in biblical like ideologies.
yeah. Another thing that made me start to question things was just my own eyesight. Because when we go to church, and I would be like, watch all these vulnerable people giving money, like their last money. The pastor's getting richer. He's coming in with new shoes, new clothes every time. I'm looking around at Auntie Betty over there, and she's still got the same moth-eaten cardigan that she's had on since I met her. And I'm just like, this isn't right. This
Did
is
you the cognitive dis did you see the thing that went viral of this preacher who was like he had 10,000 people in his church, and then there was like another 10,000 or something online, and he was like, everybody's got to give $20, and then
Oh
he
my God.
told the ushers to lock the doors, and he was like, they were hesitant, and he was like, no, what did I say? Lock the doors. So I was having a discussion about that with some religious people, some Christians, and they were like, oh, you don't understand. That's for the safety of everyone, because when you're in the hood in the church, they lock the doors. It wasn't like he was locking them in. I was like, it didn't give that. It
Yeah.
didn't give that. Like, and
Oh
it
my God.
didn't, and it didn't seem that the people usually lock the doors, because he said it like two or three times, like people were hesitant to do it. So it didn't seem like it was a normal request, right? Um, but that's what they do. They justify all of this strange behavior that they see, and they get the idea of forgiveness. This idea of forgiveness is often given to like the worst
Mm,
people.
mm. Do you know Kenneth Copeland and Creflo Dollar? Have you heard of them?
I've heard of them. I've heard of them.
I grew up on them. My household was big on them, right? And I noticed,
Okay. They like you actually listen to some preacher called Creflo Dollar.
I'm telling you, all right, I'm telling you. He's the one who's been friends with Mace, who used to be the protege of Diddy. Okay.
Mm,
Then we've got Eddie Long over there. Like I listened to all of them because I don't want to keep implicating my mom, but it was a single parent household. I can't. We listened to that stuff, right? And I would watch them brag about how God has given them this mansion and they're so happy. It's okay to be rich, like, and to brag about it. It's okay to brag about it. God doesn't want you to be poor. God doesn't want you to be poor. If you want to make money, call the number on your screen right now and get all this bundle of CDs that you can listen to for 72 hours, right? We're having a slash sale. It's just get it now. That's what I would see. It was basically telemarketing. And I'm just like, why?
did your mom buy them?
Oh yeah, we had a lot. And she would force us to have devotionals every Saturday morning where we'd have to wake up, me and my brother would have to wake up and read the Kenneth Copeland book of stuff and pray. And oh my God, hard times. I just remember being in there like, once I get out of this house, I am never going to church. You can't make me. You can't make me. Um, but yeah, so it's just, and now Kenneth Copeland turned out to be an actual demon. Have you seen that clip of him?
No.
Oh my God, I'll send it to you later. His
Okay.
mask finally slipped and he's been exposed, right? Um, but he looks really possessed in this clip. This reporter was interviewing him and asking him why he bought something from Tyler Perry, and Kenneth was like, his eyes turned like demonic, and he was like, "Don't you ever question me!" And oh, it was just weird. It was just weird because you have to understand. I always knew something was off, but I just couldn't. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. I I feel like the average Christian person could probably still like justify him in some sort of way, because when you listen to their stories, even like I was particularly like women's love stories, right? Within Christianity, it's always, oh shoot. Are you
Okay,
still there? Where are you?
can you not see me?
Hold on. I'm finding, okay. I remember what I was saying. Copeland.
Creflo Dollar once posted his private jet on Instagram, and then there was backlash, and he deleted it. And I'm just like, yeah, like you said, Creflo Dollar, like the clue was always right there.
I mean,
And Creflo is a protege of Chemical. Like all these preachers knew each other, right? So I thought that was a bit interesting. They all know each other, and I feel like they were all in on this. It's
it was
like,
a pyramid scheme.
yeah. Literally, that must have. Yeah, that's what it is. I just,
No, I mean it's one of those things where I feel like they justify it because they'll be like, "Oh, that was a false prophet," or they
yeah,
lost
that's
his
exactly that.
way.
Exactly that.
Um,
Yes.
then it turns into like a whole different excuse
Yeah.
and
You're right.
line,
You're
and
right.
trying to justify why it's okay. And I
Yeah.
mean, the Bible's, I think that's the thing. The Bible you talked about is contradictions. Those contradictions require like this blind unthoughtful
Hmm.
like faith.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, I feel like because they don't have anything else. And I think that um especially in the United States, where Black Americans literally had nothing to hold on to but like this hope of like this merciful God one day, because like all of their suffering and all of like they just needed to be good, you know what I mean, to get through it, and like somehow it's going to be better. Like that that starvation of hope, I think that's what filled them. And that has been filling them for like a lot of people for a really long time. And I think that's why it's so ingrained and hard for people to deconstruct it, because you're going to have to break down all
Yeah.
of the things
Yeah.
that you ever knew. You know, like you can't deconstruct white supremacy without deconstructing religion.
Everything. Yeah. I mean, why? One of the things that also always angered me about the Bible is why is there nothing in there about racism? You know, if your God is really on your side, why is he not saying anything about how that's wrong? Because he says servants how they should behave. He says wives how they should behave, right? Children how they should behave, Christians how they should behave, but nothing about how racism should be dealt with. Like nothing that says racism is wrong. Nothing that says you should treat everyone the same regardless of skin color. It doesn't say that anywhere.
No, it wasn't meant to ever address that. It created, I mean, it created ideologies around a certain supremacy culture, and that supremacy culture, which was white people, were the ones who were going to always be in control of that. So I don't think they thought about it to why, yeah, like, I mean, white people wrote the freaking Bible, so there was no way they would write something like that. And I mean, it was written before race existed, but you know, when they came down to to kill everybody and turn them into Hebrew Jews or Israelites or whatever the hell, you know, they turned them into, um, they already saw themselves as superior. I mean, they created the caste system in India. So it's just like they saw dominance in what they were doing, and
Mm.
it was always going to be them in control, so there's no need to ever address that.
All right, let's address white Christians for a minute because they're not in the Bible either, right? Europe is nowhere in the Bible either. If Africa's not in the Bible, well, Africa is in the Bible, but if black people are not in the Bible, white people are definitely not in the Bible. And also, Jesus would have been an immigrant, right? He would have been a Palestinian, which is so ironic right now. He was a Palestinian.
Yeah.
So do they know that? Because they're so racist, right? The Jesus they worship is brown, Middle
Yeah,
East
but
brown.
they turned him white.
No, but they know that he came from a certain part of the world, right? And they
No,
know that their people are nowhere in the Bible.
no.
So how do they decide that this is the religion they want to latch onto, as opposed to say a European pagan religion? Do you see what I mean? Why is it this? And I think the reason is because they like how it sets them up. I think the Bible is set up in such a way that, well, like you said, I mean, they see themselves as superior and they can project that into the image of the Bible, I guess. But my question is why not another religion that is more closely aligned to them ethnically? I just find it a bit odd.
Like what is white people? Like they erased all of their culture to be white. You know what I mean? So when you think about like Europe and what they worshipped, what, you know what I mean, what like early Europeans associated with, like in a religious way, there was not really, um yeah, it wasn't really that. I mean, it as you know, these things started to birth themselves, they were the pale people who owned these ideas around patriarchy. And so when we talk about biblical times before Christ, it wasn't Christianity. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't even Judaism. It was just like people who had a common idea coming together and starting to force that idea on the people that they found in the world, right? Like that's what was happening in biblical times. Like there was no Christ. There was this made up God from a mountain, or volcano or whatever. Like when you read the Bible without thinking about it in the sense of what we have come to know about it, like especially like what we're talking about biblical times before Christ. Um there wasn't Christianity yet, right? So as these Indo-Europeans started coming across the Middle East and killing people to create um, what became Christianity, these ideas started reaching into Greece, right? So, like, and the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians, where Christianity eventually like started to form and spread from there. Like, you have to just like look at it from like how it didn't have a name. You know what I mean? What they were doing didn't have a name. It was just like people killing people to, in a common idea for men to have power. That was the first part before it had a name. And then it became a religion where they consumed things and made women marry, attach themselves to men, because that wasn't what was happening before. Like that just wasn't people's reality. So they put fear and all kinds of things to start slowly wiping out different belief systems, because
You
there
said,
were women-led religions or and societies in like Greece. So when they started killing people there, taking over there, and started this like more European now, right? Because now we're in Greece, like, and the Romans, like they spouted like Christianity from these like male focused things. So before they had names, that's what you have to like remember. Like this shit didn't have a name before. It was just like people killing folks in the name of like their fire god.
okay, but like you said that white people killed all their own cultures off, right?
Basically, to
Was that
become
this?
white, like that's what ended up happening. Cause like outside of like the Scottish people and like Irish people, what was here before? We know there were lots of people here in Italy before like they became white and like unified, as well as in France. There were different like groups of people, and that just all got wiped out by themselves.
That's true. Like the Carthaginians, Carthaginians from Carthage,
Hmm.
and the Picts.
Are these special white people?
Yeah, so like before Scotland became Scotland, there was between the Scots and the Picts.
Uh,
The Picts were there first, but the Scots wiped them out. So it would have been Pictland, but now it's Scotland.
yeah, they just wiped each other out. Like that's what happened. And then they all
Yeah.
became white later. You know what I mean? So it's just like they needed to unify under their kings, under
Yeah.
their imperial systems and all of this. So like they just slowly melted into things, I think.
Do you think there's such a thing as white culture? Like,
Yeah, it's like raping, pillaging, and genociding.
hmm.
I mean, in general.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, that has been pretty consistent. If we're looking
Yeah.
at track records, there's no denial of that.
Yeah, stealing and lying about it, creating problems and pretending they solved them.
And do you feel like, is it just me, or do you feel like Trump just kind of came out with this Christianity thing from nowhere? Like I know he was always like a Christian, but it was never like forced down people's throats like this. I feel like this term he's like
Trump
really
is not a Christian.
well, he's not a real Christian, but he likes to use it for some reason.
He uses it because it's how you can manipulate people and how you've been able to manipulate people for a long time. And so, I mean, the thing is, politics and religion have never really been separate. You know what I mean? So, um, he just he's just been able to ignite or like connect with like a lot of religious people's hatefulness. You know what I mean? Because that's what it comes down to. Like they hate that they especially the United States, and how racism and religion and all of those things are so intertwined.
Mm.
And he's saying all of the things that make them feel like they're going to have their power to, I don't know, dominate over like the minorities in the country again. Like that's what it comes down to.
I
And
just
they think
can't.
that's their God-given right.
I just can't get my head around the fact that they are just stupid. They're just as stupid as black people for believing in the same thing. They're stupid for believing that that white supremacy and Christianity can exist in the same sentence.
But it always has.
When again, I refer you to the fact that this all took place in the Middle East, so it's nothing to do with them. So why are they imposing themselves into a religion that had nothing to do with them? Do you see what I'm saying?
It did have something to, because Indo-Europeans started this shit. It was white people who started killing these brown people.
Okay, but that's not the premise of the Bible or Judaism, for example, which gave birth to Christianity. That was Middle East, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So what you're saying?
But this is what I'm saying. All of the dark people in that area are pretty much gone, right? So if Jesus was black skinned with woolly hair,
Mm-hmm.
and now most of the people over there are beige,
Mm-hmm.
okay, at the very at the very
Yeah.
right? Iranian were the original white people.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's,
so they it is a white supremacy in the Bible.
yeah, but you're saying Iranians are white. Would you do
They
you see
were
them
the original white people.
I agree they're original white people, but do you think they are white now today?
By today's standards, no, but they were the original white people.
Hmm.
And they're pale, you know what I mean? There's pale skinned people. So why all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Where did all the darkness go from the Middle East when we know that there were dark skinned people there,
Mhm.
right? So it got bred out over time. So that was part of their process to get rid of the original people that were there.
You really think so?
Yeah.
You think that there was that much thought into this?
Yeah, because they were taking land and
Yeah,
how
but if you're breeding out, that's taking like that's generations, that's time, that's a long
oh,
time.
it has been. It has been. It's been so much time that people don't remember anything.
How's that to do with taking land? Like what I'm saying is, it's one thing to water down the ethnicity of an area, right? But then you're saying there was a land grab that would have happened while the dark people were there. They wouldn't have waited to
Yeah,
to
they
breed
were
them out.
happening. Yes, it was happening. That's what they were doing when they were coming down and taking like when they took over the temples and the cultures that
Mhm.
were there, right? So they started stealing the women, right? They started stealing the women that they couldn't like get to submit, they killed, right? So now they're building fear and everything. Um, in the Bible, what's his name? Solomon, who had like the 700 wives. That was land grabbing, right? These were women across different cultures, across
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
lands.
yeah, that's
They
true.
weren't just concubines. They were princesses. These were women who had means. He was stealing land.
Is this when
So
God was a woman? Is this from that book?
yeah, it's well, it might not. It may have been from one of my deep dives, but it started me thinking about, yeah, but that was all of that. Like all of this, um,
That makes a lot of sense actually.
it does. It's just like they never stopped doing that.
Mhm.
I mean, why are they so obsessed with us? I mean, in controlling us. This is how they created the patriarchal and patrilineal lineage because
Mhm.
it used to be matrilineal lineages,
Right, yeah.
right? So, in order to get the power and have men used to get put out, okay, and the women would have everything,
Mm.
and that the tables turned, right? So, if you put everybody in a position who had power, in a position of servitude, and scare them and make them like, okay, you know what? I can take another wife. You can't have another husband. And if I catch you with another dude, I'll stone you to death. Right? It created this fear in women to have to be like, oh, I always have to please so I can just fucking live. Um, but it was it was even somewhere, I think it was, I can't remember if this was in the Bible or not, but I'll have to like double check. Um, but there was a story and it was basically saying that the women, when they realized like they weren't worshiping the goddesses anymore and they were trying to worship them again because their lives had gotten so exponentially bad, you know what I mean? Then they were killed, you know what I mean? So it was just like anytime they diverge, but it was always about power. So for a patriarch to be able to start controlling, you have to first control the matrilineal line because these are the people who have the children, and
Hmm.
be able to say that all the land now goes to a son instead of a daughter, and the daughters are always in a position, the females in the situation are always in a position to have to serve the men in the house. So, and they never get anything. So back in the biblical times, like women could get put out if they displeased their husbands, and they would just be out, and now they're soiled because a man touched her, right? Because apparently men are that disgusting.
Yeah.
Um, like it's just like no, it is. It was about land. Like the burning of the witches was about getting land
Mm.
and about accumulating power and wealth. And this is how they developed their religion.
So let's go back to medieval England for a minute, and or medieval America, right? Can you imagine being a woman in that time?
Well, I
Like,
don't think there was a medieval America.
all right, England. Then. Because like imagine just walking around minding your own business, and maybe you talk to yourself, and someone overhears you talking to yourself, thinking aloud, and they accuse you of mumbling spells because you're a witch, and they go around and tell the whole village. She's like, it must have been terrifying, really terrifying. If you say something, you're a witch. If you don't say anything, you're too quiet, you're a witch, right?
Hmm.
If you're using herbs and medicines, then you're a witch. If you know how to use like
If you're
pharmaceuticals,
happy without a man, you're a witch.
yeah, exactly. Right? You have too many cats, you're a witch. My God. Like it must have been really terrifying for real. Like I've seen those t-shirts saying that they burned women, not witches,
Hmm.
to remind you that this witch thing is just
For
a
people, yeah.
it's just like a it almost cartoonizes the whole thing, right? These
Oh,
were
it
actually
does.
women
Because, yeah.
who I bet all of okay, 99% of them were innocent, for God's sake. I can imagine that they
I
were
mean,
all innocent.
when you think about it, for the most part, again, most of them were single women, unmarried women. So these would be women who had resources.
Yeah, and that was the problem.
Yeah,
That was the problem. And
exactly.
apparently there was a motivation for people to turn them in. I think I heard it from you because
Yeah, the motivation was like sometimes they would get piece of the land
yeah,
or
yeah, 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 yeah.
like
That's just
resources that these women had for turning them in.
that's just asking. And the government knew, or whoever knew that that's what would happen. That people would be brought in even if they
This
weren't.
is why the government and the church were intertwined,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you had these political, spiritual, whatever, and
Mhm.
the church gets that land, and then you know what I mean, like they're expanding their control and their territories. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I'm just thinking about the parishes in a town in
mm,
England and how even like the whole construct of like parishes and like dioceses and all that. It's all about land and like areas. It's like about areas and how many numbers make up a diocese, for example, or whatever. So now the
no,
more I think about it, I'm seeing the connection.
yeah.
I'm seeing that there's a connection.
I mean, the Vatican is its own country.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like it has its own like embassies
Got its
and
own flag. Its own flag.
yeah, it's insane. You know what I mean? It's insane. And within the Vatican how much stolen like things from around the world they have. It's insane.
How long has the Vatican been there, having all these things?
I mean, the Vatican itself, I don't know when it was. Hold on, now I have to find out because there was um I can't remember the year, like 17 something, 17 in the 1700s I think is when Rome or like they took Rome from the Vatican, right? So because or from the church, and they created the country within the country as part of the peace treaty, right? So the pope or whatever they used to own Rome and a lot of southern Italy.
Hmm.
And so when they were trying to unify and, you know, put more power outside of the church, because the church was actually keeping a lot of people poor. Like it wasn't like happening, it wasn't like a happy situation. You
Yeah.
know, like they were taking a lot of like resources from citizens and everything. So in order to I guess take that power from the church, they took Rome from the church and like all started taking the land that the church owned and they gave them their own autonomous country as part of like this peace agreement between like what became Italy and the church.
Do you think anyone will ever get into the Vatican and see what's in there?
No.
No?
Like maybe, you know, once the last pope like shoots the last king and he's choked out. I don't know. Like we'd have I can't imagine while the systems that
Mm.
exist right now. No,
I fantasize about breaking into it a lot and
it
seeing
would
what's
be
there.
interesting. It
Yeah.
would be interesting. I'm
What
sure.
happened when they opened the portal to hell or something in
There's
December?
never a portal to hell. Oh my
What
god,
was it? They
it's the
opened something.
Jubilee year. So the Jubilee year actually is actually a Hebrew, a Jewish tradition, and that got translated over into Christianity or Christianity kept or whatever. And basically it's like the Christian pilgrimage. And so there is a door that pilgrims could walk through, like it's a blessing. It's not a gate to hell or whatever they people were like crazy making up. So like this year is the Jubilee year. And so they do this ritual and they open this door and it's kind of like you're supposed to be like confessing. You walk through the door and then you're like forgiven of your, you know,
Mm.
one of those kind of things.
Right, okay.
But it's also it has a history from like way I think like the 1300s or something, and it's like a time of reconstruction in Rome and like you know expectation. Basically, also it was really dirty because back then when they did it, they would free Hebrew slaves. No other slaves, right, would be free. They would free Hebrew slaves, and they would I guess also if people didn't do certain things, they might get hung off a bridge. You know what I mean? Like, so it was always, you know, a little killing
Yeah.
just involved as well. So,
Don't you think it's ironic that one of the Ten Commandments, maybe even one of the first ones, is that you should not kill? And then here God is like killing all around.
yeah, because he wants to be the only murderer. You can't have like everybody being murderers when you want to be one. Like, you
Uh,
got to make the rules in your favor.
mm. I'm going to look at the Ten Commandments right now, actually. Oh, there we go. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. There's that narcissism.
Hmm.
Hold on. Thou shalt not. Oh my God. Four. The first four commandments are about God in some way. Did you know that?
I don't know them in order, but they're all just,
Okay, so the first one is not to have any gods before him.
hmm.
Then it's not to make any other graven image of anything. Then it's not take the name of God in vain, which is ironic because that's kind of vain. And then remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy to worship him. Like so that's the first four.
Yeah.
I never realized like I'm looking at it with him being a narcissist, right? I'm looking at it through that lens, and it's so obvious now. It's really obvious. Interesting.
And those are the commandments they want like women to apply to the man in their life.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a connection. Okay, well, what did you say earlier that you said something about a part two?
Oh, I said we could maybe do a part two another time about like Christianity leading into the whole civil rights.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it for next time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
I don't know. So how do you think this is probably my last question before we and how do you think Black people, African people our Black diaspora
Mm.
can start like really having a deconstruction, like a mass deconstruction journey? Like, what do you think needs to wake up?
I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be a realization that what you call God, or what you call, like when you say, oh, the Holy Spirit spoke to me, or God told me not to do this, what that is your intuition. You have to understand that it's not a sin to own the fact that you are powerful and that we're all gods, right? And that's
Mm,
actually what Jesus was saying in the Bible, that he was saying that you should all be, when he said I am the way, he meant like the way that he could make, or turn water into wine, and do these things, you can
he's
do
the
it too.
model
You
for
can
you to
do it too.
follow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he wasn't
yeah,
saying follow me, he was saying do this for you in your
yeah,
life. That's your shit,
exactly.
that's your source.
Hmm.
But they got it wrong, and started to follow him. So what I'm saying is, like, when a Muslim says it's God, or a Christian says it's Jesus, or whatever, they're all roads lead to the same mountain in that sense, because what you're all assigning to that power is actually just your intuition and the universe. That's
Yeah,
it. The universe doesn't care what you call it, right? Serendipity or a coincidence can be an act of God to a Christian. It doesn't make it so. It doesn't care what you call it. It just is. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like,
yeah.
you need to understand that, like, there's no like acts of God. God didn't do that thing for you. You did it, or it was a circumstantial coincidence. That's it.
It's the energy that you made
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah.
You put that energy
I think
into
Christians,
something. Yeah.
I think the black diaspora really needs to understand energy work. And this is why spirituality, it comes back to spirituality anyway, because when you start from that place, then you understand how energy works. Then you understand how things happen in your life. Then you realize that the power is inside of you. It's not like it's not out there. You don't have to wait for God to do something. Like, you can literally just do it yourself, but you have to know how to harness that energy. That's it. And I think the diaspora is too afraid to have conversations around energy work, introspection, dark night of the soul, shadow work, any of that stuff is
Yeah.
the devil stuff. Like, but no, like, let's mature and like look at it. Just look at it, study it, explore it.
Evolve. It's
Yeah.
time to evolve. Yeah.
And I know that they're scared of what's on the other side of that, because if I deconstruct this, it's going to change my whole paradigm of everything, and then I've got nothing. Well, no, actually, you'll find yourself in that process, which is a journey.
Yeah, I agree.
Once you know how to harness manifestation, you realize that, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. The world didn't end, and God's not sending me to hell, because you'll see it as fictitious. You'll see it for what it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first step, is to like embrace spirituality. And don't you think it's funny that people who are Christians, like, they're very afraid to, like, they just put everything on God, as anything that goes well in their life, it's God, and they're very scared to kind of associate, like, they see it as blasphemy. If you talk about your own spirituality, that's blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, because there should only be one spirit in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just find it a bit crazy. I just find it crazy that you can hear your own thoughts in your head and think that it was God telling you, rather than thinking that maybe your higher self was just trying to give you a leg up.
No, it's true. I mean, it's funny because I was talking to this woman and he was trying to she was trying to tell me how like people who made the Bible, like they heard God. I was like, how do you know who they heard?
Exactly.
They're
Exactly.
telling you they heard God. I
Right.
was like, I'm telling you that if I hear myself, I hear my God. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so if if you believe in the God that they heard,
Mm-hmm.
who knows what, I'm like, you don't know what drugs they were on.
Exactly.
Like
Why
you don't
doesn't why doesn't that God speak to you directly then?
exactly why, and like why they're writing the words of, like, why do you trust them?
Exactly.
And why
Exactly.
do you trust a man who wrote something tens of thousands of years ago that literally says that you aren't like you as a woman are nothing? You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, how can you believe that? And then how would men, like, and men only want to believe it because it gives them the power,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it makes sense for them, but women
Yeah.
carrying it on makes no sense to me.
Exactly. Exactly this. Exactly this. Why? Like,
Yeah.
you can literally not even blame the modern man for feeling so aligned with it because it literally was made for them, right?
Yeah, it was made to subjugate them.
No, I mean it was made for men to
Oh.
wear it like a glove, like
Yeah,
just.
no, for men, yes. And especially for black men,
Mm,
to have any sort of thing that makes them feel powerful in a
mhm.
world that has taken so much power from them in a patriarchy. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah, it makes sense because weak men need that. You know what I mean? Like that's what weak men, regardless of ethnicity, need. They need a structure to say
Yeah,
that I am the one and
yeah,
I am the powerful one.
yeah. What do you think needs to happen for deconstruction to
I
begin
mean,
with?
I agree with you. I think there just has to be a mass a- awakening and realization that we have been giving away our power. We
Hmm.
have been putting our power in places that weren't ever meant for us. And it's been to our detriment as like a global society. Like no matter where you are as a person of color, when you look at Abrahamic, not just Christianity, but like Abrahamic religions in general, they have not done anything for us. They have only supported our subjugation with the idea that we're going to reach some heavenly, like weird,
Mm.
paved in gold worship, another man for the rest of our life. Like, this sounds like hell. You know what I mean? Like, but that's better apparently than just burning where all your friends are going to be. It's probably just going to be a party. I don't believe in heaven or hell, but I
Yeah.
just think that um it's just that we have nothing, I think, spiritually other than this. And we need something. We need some fulfillment, and because we don't know how to trust ourselves, and the Bible
Yeah, yeah,
the
that.
Bible reinforces not trusting yourself.
Right, right. That's what I was trying to say. That's what I was trying to say. You just summarized it perfectly. It really promotes not trusting yourself, your own intuition. It says things like your wisdom, like man's wisdom is folly, like only trust, not thinking for yourself. It literally promotes no critical thinking skills. That's a good point. And I'm trying to remember what I was thinking.
You're saying it promotes not trusting your intuition
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Yeah, what I was saying like about the Negro spirituals and things. Why that is so important. Like that's so important for me in my life, right? Because
yeah.
but I feel like if we the way the church makes you feel when the gospel choir is singing, you know, I don't know
That's a
how.
fullness. No, it's a fullness, and you feel
Yeah,
like you feel that in a black church. Like you can
yeah,
feel that rhythm,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
is
So
hypnotic. You know what I
and
mean?
that if we did that in a way that was like I don't know how, but if there was some kind
For
of like
us, yeah.
ancestral ritual or ancestral way of connecting, you would find crazy things would happen. Like you would be
No, it's
shocked.
true. And we did do that. You
Yeah,
see that in tribal like history.
yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
still tribes who
Yeah.
do that. Like they don't see that. They see when you see African dance, those rituals, that
Yeah,
that rhythm,
energetically. Yeah,
that was, you know what I mean? That energy was for them. And they did it for different periods in time. They did it for different, different things in the season. Like there were so many reasons that they did that, like dances, and we, still feel that rhythm, but we're just not giving that energy to ourselves. And I think that's something we need to start really, like, really deconstructing,
yeah,
is where we're putting our energy, and why is it that we are giving our energy to a power structure that has just never been supportive for us?
yeah.
So,
Because I think we're trying to put a plaster on something that needs deep surgery work. Like it's one thing to boycott. What was it? Was it Target? Was Target?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is great, and that has affected their pockets, and that is great. But that's not going to long term solve the problem if we still spiritually are disconnected and broken from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Agree.
yeah, it's just about not being afraid to look at within and at our own traditions
Yeah.
and stop demonizing them because that's what we've been taught to do. You know.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about like how religion and civil rights movements you know what I mean, have been intertwined with us. I think that um we need to really like examine that in the deconstruction process, especially for Black Americans, um because so much, you know, of our fight associated with our rights, our human rights in the United States, has also intertwined with like religion and politics, you know. So most of our leaders are associated with the church, you know, pushing for civil rights, and that has also connects and keeps people connected to the
Right.
church
Yeah.
and Christianity.
Do you think it's like just blind without thinking loyalty, or do you think it's like a conscious, like, no, we can't leave the church because they've actually done all this for us?
I think a little bit of both. You know, I think a little bit of both.
Mm,
So it's, you know, like deconstructing these things and giving up what felt or feels like a source of power because you don't think you have your own
yeah.
is really hard to move past. So
I have a question for all the Black churches. Where's all the money going? Huh? Why are we not seeing community projects for children, or helping uplift Black kids in the area, or like building hospitals, or putting
the
something towards?
church, the money is going to the church's
We know
new,
that. I want them to
new
answer.
wing
I
fund. It's
want
going
them
to
to
the
answer.
new wing fund.
Hmm.
They're still building that, you know, money for the new wing.
And
So
then we've got the spaceship that we're building for the Rapture as well. Everyone's got to pay for that. Yeah. I want answers, and I feel like we need to hold the Black church accountable. And also, I feel like because mostly Black men lead the Black church, there's also that dynamic of like, or don't question authority, which also feeds into the perpetuation of all of this. Like you just said about the authority thing, and
but you know, like what's interesting is like women keep the church going, right?
yeah,
Like
they're just as bad. Yeah,
they need to keep they need women in the church to keep it going. So, and that is another way that they continue the process of patriarchal ideologies in women. So they keep women in the church. Men are meant to like half the preachers and pastors are always like, well, you know, I was a pimp for like the first 45 years of my life and then, you know, became a preacher at like 50 and then like pimps out himself to the church ladies and molests young girls in the congregation. So, you know.
sounds right. You know what's crazy? There's this church. I'm gonna name and shame. It's called UCKG, Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, in London. It's a really big church, massive.
Mhm.
And surprise, surprise, I was dragged along there every other Sunday, right? And what came out of that church? I saw a video of this woman came forward and she spoke about how she was abused in that church. And then there's another girl on TikTok who's always exposing that church specifically by name,
Mm,
the people in that church by name, because they abused her for years. And
wow.
she talked about how it was like a cult. And yeah, I mean, I just, it's like, whoa, I brushed past that, I was in there. And I remember looking at the preacher and he was always wearing this bright white tuxedo. And I just thought, he looks so flashy and he seems a bit arrogant. And everyone's acting a fool, fainting left, right. And I'm just like, okay. And then
I
to
think
find out that that church with the flashy pastor has been harboring all these abusers,
yeah.
you know, it kind of confirmed what I suspected, but also it's disappointing because guess what? It's still up and running today, and people
Yeah.
just keep going there. People just keep going there.
No, it's like that across every culture, which is sad.
Yeah. Because even when a preacher is exposed, they will still have loyal followers forever.
Yeah, because they, you know, their Bible demonizes the abusers more than often than not. And it also gives right, you know, to the righteous to take what they want. So it's just
What do you
like
mean? What do you mean?
because you read through like the Old Testament, it's just like, you know, go into this town if they're heathens, you know, kill the men, kill like everybody. But if you find a virgin, keep it for yourself.
Yeah.
If you find a young woman that comes to your liking and she is not laying with another man,
Mm.
Go ahead. Take her out. If you get caught, pay her father 50 shillings. And
Yeah, it's stuff like that.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Always a loophole, man.
yeah, there's always,
But
but
women can't get out of it.
the
Women
women,
are
yeah,
stoned.
like the
No,
women, if you do the same thing, then you are stoned, you are thrown off a building.
you're
Your
shamed.
husband can
Your
like,
legacy is shamed. Yeah,
yeah, it's like throw you out into the wilderness, and if you've had children and been touched by a man, nobody's gonna want you because men are disgusting.
yeah.
So, yeah.
The delivery was funny then. I can imagine you giving a tour of it, like if you find anyone in here. But yeah, that's what it was like. Yeah, for real. Anyway, I guess Monday for part two.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We'll be recording Monday. It won't be up. Will it be up on Monday, you think?
Well, this,
No, we'll get this up on the weekend, right?
yeah, or Monday morning.
Okay, you send it to me, I'll edit it.
No,
Why?
why do you want to do that?
Because you don't have time.
You don't have time. You're going out all day tomorrow. Look, I feel like we can do this off camera. Let's argue off
Yeah.
camera.
Go ahead and sign out.
Okay. But you didn't say goodbye properly.
That's what I'm saying. Let's go ahead and sign out.
Oh, I thought you meant like sign out of this. I was gonna.
No.
All right. So don't forget to subscribe to Reiko UK, and at the G Life.
Yes. So thanks for joining us.
See you next time. Bye.
Ciao.